suppose, if you will, that I had created gold from mercury. I was able to transform it. Now, with that in mind, what would you rather have? I can give you a little bit of the gold. I can sell you the gold at half price because, after all, it was created in a way that came from a lesser material. Or I can give you the knowledge. I can give you the process, the procedure, the technique. Which do you suppose is more valuable? Now, if you said the first one, well, you might do good on the stock market, buying low and selling high. But if you found that the second option was better, to buy the knowledge, the process, and that is actually more valuable than the gold itself, then you might be ready for the teachings of alchemy. Hi. We're in the forest today. It's very calm, a little bit humid. And today I'm going to be covering sort of a new field of study, a combination between chemistry and alchemy. And so, as much as I am a teacher in it, I will also be a student, because we're all still learning. So, the discussions we're going to have today, they're going to be a little different than what you're used to, and if there's anything that's conflicts your previously existing ideas or beliefs, try to take it with a grain of salt. There's no doubt that the so-called proto-chemistry or alchemy of the past was actually just plain wrong. But what parts of it were not wrong, and maybe we have lost those concepts or ideas, and maybe by researching both alchemy and chemistry at the same time, we can have a greater understanding of both. Now, the main symbol in alchemy is called the Philosopher's Stone. This right here. The words magnum opus means the greatest work. And in this symbol, you can see there's other alchemical symbols combined to make one. Now, it's called the Philosopher's Stone for a reason. It's not called the pillar on which the mathematician stood. It's not called the pyramid of greed. It's called the Philosopher's Stone. So that, to me, right off the bat, indicates that we're dealing with looking at chemistry through a different lens. In conventional chemistry, you're analyzing the very fabric of existence. You have to imagine every material around you in its most microscopic form, and then try to predict how it will behave and measure the reactions and things like that. In alchemy, you're doing that, but it's more about the process of discovery and the process of transformation. And so it's a much, much broader field of study. Much broader field. For example, you could change not just the physical, but perhaps that which is part of your psyche. Maybe the processes by which material is transformed are equally as useful in transforming a human to be a better version of themselves. That, in essence, is alchemy. It's very open for learning, and for discovery. So, the old alchemical procedure was a 3 or 4 step process. And it went through different stages where different materials would change colors from black to white, red, yellow, and red, and then you knew you were done with your process. So they've taken this concept and applied it to many different things, that which is spiritual, that which is physical, so forth and so on. Today we're going to compare chemistry documentation with alchemical symbols and see if anything comes to light. But before we can continue, there's something that we have to clear up. This is like a huge thing right now. The word element. Okay? The word element comes from the Latin, and it means elementum. Now that means that which is principal, primary, rudimentary, elementary. So suppose for a minute that you have a friend that's an artist and a hippie, and you take them to your modern chemistry class, and the teacher says, okay, does anybody know what are the elements? And the hippie says, oh, I know, earth, wind, fire, water, and spirit. And the chemistry teacher would probably laugh and say, no, that's silly. There's 92 elements, not even including the lanthanides and actinides. Get out of my class. But in a way, the hippie was right, because we need to study the word element and elementum in a little more detail, the same way that a chemist would study a chemical. As it comes from the Latin elementum, it is actually 2 words, el and ment. Now, ment means of the mind. That's where the word mental comes from. The state of mind, the state of being. A state of existence that is. That's a good way to think of the word M-E-N-T. El is another very interesting word. It comes from Hebrew. And you can find it in many names, and as I say these names, you'll probably guess kind of what it means. You've got Mikael, Raphael, Gabriel, Ariel, Emmanuel. You've got electricity, elevation. Adonai Elohim. You see, what the word El means is God. And that's, I'm not trying to convince anyone of theology or atheism. That's all up for you. But that's the history of that word. So from a more scientific perspective, you might consider it nature, or that which is. That which is fundamental and primary and of the very beginning. So, elementum, it means that which is the state of God's mind, or the primary conditions of nature. So by that definition, fire, water, earth, spirit, perhaps, maybe that's thought, those are all suitable definitions for element. I would propose that for the periodic table of elements, a better name might be the periodic table of infractum, the periodic table of materia infractum, material that cannot be broken down any further, sans a nuclear reaction. If you want to call it the periodic table of atoms, that'd be fine. You see, the chemists have a different way of defining element. In their view, it's that which cannot be broken down any further, the very fabric of existence itself, rather than a general principle of existence. Okay. Keep in mind that chemists also have a different definition for organic. In the hippie world, organic means that which comes from an organism or feeds organisms in nature, something wholesome. In modern chemistry, organic means that which contains carbon. So by that measure, napalm, styrofoam, Roundup, those are all organic chemicals. So you see, the definitions here is really why the two camps of thought have such a hard time looking at each other's way of thinking. The irony of it all is that you actually can transform mercury into gold with some various nuclear processes. But that's beyond today's introductory video. So, in the next video, we're going to take a look at some chemical equations and compare alchemical symbols.